All right, audio's going. Hello.
Hi.
What's your name?
Vera.
Vera, good to meet you. Where are you from, Vera?
I was born in France and grew up in San Francisco, and my mom's Vietnamese.
Ah, okay.
My dad's European.
That's pretty cool. Born in France. What were your parents doing out there?
My mom moved to France, to Paris, when she was 18 to get away from Vietnam. And my dad just wanted to go to France after college because he was like following some French philosophers or whatever.
Oh, how interesting. Yeah. What kind of French philosophers?
Like Foucault and Derrida, and I don't know what else.
That's really awesome.
Then he didn't really pursue that. That was just kind of a phase for him.
Yeah.
Because then he got into technology, like everyone else.
And so you grew up in San Francisco?
Yeah.
Did you go to high school in the city?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was high school like for you?
I mean, it was awkward because it was high school. It was kind of, I felt a little bit out of place. Well, when I first moved to America, I went to a French middle school and stuff. So high school was my first time being in the American system, which was really different from the French system because they like want you to have opinions about stuff and like talk. They want you to participate, which I hated participating. So my grade would always go down because I wouldn't participate. Then it made me feel bad about myself.
You were in France, elementary school, middle school.
I was in France until I was 7, and then I came here and went to a French school in San Francisco.
I see.
So it was all taught by French people, and it all followed the like French government's curriculum. So it was super French.
Yeah, that's cool. Let's see. Do you still keep in touch with people that you went to high school with?
Like 1 or 2.
What's your earliest childhood memory?
Well, I have a memory of being in the elevator in the hospital to see my sister being born, and so that would have been when I was 3. But I might have earlier memories, but can't think of them.
Yeah. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have a younger sister who's 3 years younger than me.
One younger sister.
Yeah.
2 girls.
Yeah.
Do you live in the city now?
I live in Oakland.
Oakland. How do you like do you feel like it's very different, Oakland versus San Francisco?
It's a little different, yeah. I mean, I like Oakland better. I like the East Bay better now because I'm just so familiar with San Francisco, having grown up there, and just like the tech stuff, blah, blah, blah. Oakland feels a little bit more down to earth.
What year did you graduate from high school?
2010.
2010, okay. What TV shows did you like as a kid?
I didn't watch any TV.
No TV at all?
Mm-mm.
Did your parents not, or did they like not allow it?
No, we had a TV, but it wasn't like hooked up to cable or something. And so like sometimes I watched like a couple of Disney movies. I don't know, they didn't watch TV either, so it just wasn't like a real thing. But like if I wanted to, I could have, I think.
Was there a lot of, was it more, like what did you do when you were a kid, like to pass the time?
I think I played with my sister a lot, like played with dolls and played with whatever, just like did silly things, played with stuffed animals and stuff like that. And I drew. And yeah.
Did you go to college?
Yeah.
What did you study?
I studied math and chemistry.
Oh, cool. And do you do chemistry and stuff now?
No, I'm an artist.
Oh, cool. What kind of art do you do?
Abstract, swirly, calligraphic, kind of psychedelic paintings, but not really. I don't know. It's hard to explain. But they're kind of layered and complex and organic and feminine, lots of movement.
Do you like the art scene in Oakland more than San Francisco, or do you feel like it's different, or?
I'm not that crazy about the art scene in the Bay Area in general. Maybe I like it better in Oakland. Maybe I haven't like really gotten out there and really tried to be in it, but I'm not that inspired by it. So I kind of am thinking about moving down to LA at some point to actually, well, I think I just have more chances of meeting the right people there to collaborate with, like the right kind of agents and stuff like that, the right kind of gallerists. I just am not really inspired when I go to art shows here. I'm kind of a harsh critic, but yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think it's not as, I don't know, what would you say?
Well, it's like
not
why
as
doesn't the Bay
dynamic?
Area have like a really good music scene? It's like, I don't know, the Bay Area just, there's something about it. I mean, I love it. There's a lot of like health and spirituality and like personal growth type stuff happening here. And then there's the whole tech boom happening. And those seem like the main things. So I'm happy to be here now because I'm interested in that kind of health and spirituality and self-improvement type of stuff. But yeah, it's just not as vibrant in culture as one might think it is. Also, there's something about art being like really political here. Like you just have to have a certain kind of thing. And for some reason, I feel like LA would be more accepting of my kind of art, or my kind of art would just have more of an audience there. And space too. LA just has like bigger spaces. I like to make really large paintings. And so a lot of the galleries in San Francisco, I mean, some of them would be good, but
Everything is just like much more condensed.
yeah, exactly.
Let's see. What was your first job?
I think I was a babysitter for my neighbor's kids when I was like probably too young to be watching other kids.
What's been your favorite job so far?
Well, I haven't had that many jobs, like what normal people would call jobs, because after college I decided to just pursue art and I got a grant, and then I just sort of like managed to like avoid entering the adult job world to the best of my ability, which is partly kind of like avoiding adulting, but also partly like not wanting to be like brainwashed or corrupted or like tired out by just the 9-to-5 thing that like tears down on people. But I feel kind of bratty saying that. Well, yeah, I made some good investments in Bitcoin, and then it's gone up and stuff. So it's like, and I've been selling my art too. So like a combination of selling some paintings and just knowing that I have a backup makes me not that excited about, not that inclined to look for a job.
Yeah. Do you miss doing chemistry?
Yeah, kind of. I miss some of the brain work, which I satisfy my intellectual side, but just like looking up and researching random things, but it's not quite the same intensity as like the chemistry itself. And then I miss being in the lab and like mixing things and feeling like I'm a witch. instead of making potions.
What's something that you did? I don't know what would you? I really don't know much about chemistry, but
Like,
I don't know, what's something that you did, like an experiment?
well,
or
there was
something
like a
that was,
lab
really
where
cool?
we, in organic chemistry, where we synthesized all of these esters, and esters are like compounds that have aromas. So we made a bunch of different esters, and they each had a different aroma. Like there was like banana flavored aroma, and there was like pear aroma, and like peach aroma, like all these like kind of like flavorings that you would see in like candies and stuff. They're all based on the same type of molecular structure. So we made a bunch of them.
Interesting.
And then, or I don't remember what the structure of the lab was. I think it was like you had to identify them. Or, I don't remember.
What did some of your peers, what do they end up doing, like after they finish school for work and stuff? Like, what does someone need a chemist for?
I don't really know. I don't really know how the adult job world works. I get really confused. It's like, wait, so you, then, I don't know, they work for companies or something. or they like worked for, or they go on to grad school.
I read this book once. Maybe you've read it, Fast Food Nation.
No.
It's all about the fast food industry. So a lot of it is just like really depressing. But one part that I thought was really interesting was the journalist goes to this area where these different chemists have all these different smells, and so what he thought was like the flavor of the meat when he eats a hamburger, like that flavor or the smell of like the charbroiled flavor. It's like a little smell like and the chemist like showed him the container, and it was just this clear liquid, and he smelled it, and it was like, yeah, like it smelled like a backyard barbecue, you know?
Yeah. That stuff is pretty cool. Yeah, and I'm pretty interested in like health and nutrition in general, so I use my chemistry/science type of mind just to research that kind of stuff. Because there's a lot of just information that's not true. Like if you Google search for certain things, like the first 20 or so results will be like magazines being like, oh, to lose weight, do this and do that, and it's gonna be all like wrong.
Oh, really? So like what? Like what would be a thing that people think might be correct but is actually not correct?
Like, don't eat red meat. People say like, oh, you'll get a heart attack if you eat red meat. But like if you like trace back the studies and stuff, like there's actually those studies, I don't know the details, but like the saturated fat red meat thing, like those studies weren't actually conclusive about meat itself being the thing that causes heart disease, as opposed to a bunch of other factors. And in general, red meat is linked with like lower rates of depression and like all of these beneficial things. I'm not saying it's ethical to eat meat or whatever. I'm just saying like the information, it basically trickles down really slowly across society, and so like scientists do their research, and then some other guy who's not a scientist writes the article that's then published to the media, and they don't know anything about science, so they kind of, well, they're supposed to, but they don't. So they kind of like sensationalize everything, and then everything gets distorted and like trickles down, and then it just leads to like health problems. Like, yeah.
Let's see. So I know you said you haven't really had like a lot of jobs, but what would you say, like what was like one of the least favorite things that you've done to, I don't know, I guess to earn a living, like something that was like a crappy job or something where you're just like, oh, this sucks, I don't ever want to do this again?
Well, I don't know. There's been some stuff that's like not really legal, so I don't know if I want to incriminate myself.
Oh, that's fine.
But like those were the only ones.
What do you like to do in your spare time?
Well, I don't really make the distinction between like spare time and not spare time, because like everything kind of blends in together. But I like to go to CrossFit classes. I like to cook. I like to do some kinds of yoga and meditation. I like to hang out with my friends, my partner. I like to spend a lot of time alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I paint, that if we're counting that as my job, then whatever.
Mm-hmm. Were you raised with a certain kind of religion?
No.
No religion at all. Do you feel like, do you still feel that you don't have a religion, or have you like come to a certain kind of spirituality that maybe you didn't, that wasn't like given to you when you were growing up by your family?
Yeah, I mean, I still don't feel like I have a religion, but I think when I was younger, I used to be like very adamantly atheist. Like when I was really into science and stuff, I was like, no, only logical things that can be proven are true and everything else is not true. And then that has just like totally shifted to like, I'm pretty willing to believe like the craziest idea ever, or at least not believe it like, oh yeah, that's true, but just like entertain the possibility that it might be true. So I'm kind of, even though I feel like sometimes I have strong opinions about things, at the same time, I don't really believe anything about anything, / I believe everything about everything. So I'm a lot more open to different people's religions. Like I kind of see where they're coming from to a degree, and I'm interested in lots of kinds of spiritual traditions.
Like what?
Buddhism. I don't know.
So you mentioned, so your mother actually was in Vietnam. She's Vietnamese from Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Did she have a certain religion growing up?
No, not really. I think there was something, they had some cultural traditions like praying for their ancestors and stuff like that. And maybe there were a few like Buddha statues in the house, but they weren't really, she never really talked about it being a thing.
What about like a certain political outlook? Do you feel like your family had a certain political outlook that influenced you?
Yeah, they're kind of unusual. Like they kind of vote Republican a lot of the time, but they're super intellectual, which is kind of not what you associate with republicanism. And they live in San Francisco, and they're kind of like super liberal while being kind of Republican. I think it's kind of like libertarianism. So like fiscally conservative but socially liberal or something like that. And
kind of more libertarian.
Yeah, and I've definitely been somewhat influenced by that, but I also grew up in the Bay Area, so it was mostly just like left wing all the time. But I think having that my parents' perspective sort of put things into perspective overall. So I don't really have, I don't go around like really engaging in political conversations, but I've attended events. Like there's this event called Ephemeral. That's a gathering of boats on the Sacramento River in the summer. It's kind of like a festival, kind of like Burning Man, but it's just boats. And all the people there are kind of libertarian, but like in a really like left-wing kind of way, or Bay Area kind of way. So I tend to hang out with those people, so then I kind of absorb their ideas, which I'm fine with. So libertarian-ish.
What's that event like on the Sacramento River? What is it called again?
It's called Ephemeral, so like ephemeral island.
Oh, I got
mashed into ephemeral. It's pretty cool. I haven't really been to anything like it. It has some of the vibes of Burning Man in the sense that, I don't know, it's you have to bring everything that you need, and it's like self-reliance and stuff like that, but it's not there's no central organizer. So Burning Man you have to buy tickets to go to Burning Man. And at Ephemeral, it's like if you have a boat and you know where to come to, you can just come and bring your boat and tie it up to the island. So it's kind of like you figure out how to get there by having a friend who's renting a boat, or like renting your own boat, or having a boat, or whatever. So it's a cool
people
mix.
Just kind of like hang out.
Yeah, it's like a whole week, so people just hang out and like grill meat and talk to each other and have like mini TED Talk type things. And like at night there's like music and people like run around being crazy on little boats and stuff. So it's a lot more dangerous than Burning Man, because like
people could drown or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Has that ever happened?
It's actually never happened that somebody's drowned, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, that particular community is like really into like cryptocurrencies and that kind of like they think about the future a lot. So like part of the idea of like being on the water is that like if like there's
like if the glaciers
land
melt or something.
Well, it's like if there's kind of an apocalypse and you need to leave, you're no longer a part of the United States or something, and you want to form your own country on the water. Like the water isn't governed by anybody.
Yeah.
So that kind of idea, I think it's called like seasteading. Yeah, I should know this.
How interesting.
Yeah. So like that's what it was originally founded upon, but now it's become more of a party, but there's still a little bit of like those kinds of crowds that are still there. So like in terms of the people there, they're like some of the smartest people I know go there. So that's kind of why I like it better than Burning Man in some ways.
Is it the same duration? Is it like a week?
It's a week, yeah. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people have houseboats, so it's kind of more comfortable than Burning Man, because people will bring like luxurious things there, and it's not as rough of a environment.
Mm-hmm. What's something that you've done so far that you feel the most proud of? Done or achieved or...
I feel proud of being financially independent while not doing anything that I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And not having just like totally just inherited that money either. Like not just being born into wealth. Like money having been like a big issue when I was growing up and feeling poor and that kind of thing. And then suddenly being at a place where I'm not, feels more significant than if I'd just been rich all along.
What do you think happens when people die?
Well, I think they being their personality and their memories and like everything that they think of as like a localized them, that goes away. And then the pure awareness that is the ground of their existence stays, but since that awareness has always been part of everything, like nothing happens to it. It doesn't like go away. I potentially could believe in reincarnation in the sense that some kind of patterning that one might call the soul might then find another body, but I don't really believe that it's like this soul leaves off here and then like goes to another body, but more like certain threads keep on going in other people's, so they might kind of split up and do their thing. I'm not really sure. like I do believe in like some kind of like karma cycle between lifetimes, but I don't necessarily believe in like one soul that just like has this body and then chooses this body and then that body and then that body. But yeah, kind of feel like dying could be a really blissful thing. Like, of course, I'm afraid of it. Like, my body fears dying, but I'm also kind of like in awe of the idea of it.
What's something that you would like to see or do before you die?
There's not like a concrete thing, but I would like to have a conscious experience like day to day that's like just like wildly blissful and magnificent and like magical. Like I would like to attain that kind of state of consciousness basically before I die.
Have you had anything close to that?
Yeah. Well, various drugs have induced states like that. The most notable one being 5-methoxy-DMT. So 5-MeO-DMT. It comes from a toad, but you can also synthesize it. It's an analog of DMT, which people have heard of probably, like DMT being in the ayahuasca plant and stuff like that. So 5-MeO is kind of different. DMT tends to bring up a lot of imagery and hallucinations, and like people are kind of in the spirit realm where lots of people might see aliens or they might see their ancestors, or there's lots of things in that realm, but 5-MeO-DMT kind of like brings you straight to the place like above that where there's nothingness and everythingness. So it's kind of just this white buzzing field of ecstatic intensity.
How is it taken? Like, how is it ingested?
You can smoke it or vaporize it.
Can you talk more about that experience? What was that like?
So I did it in a kind of ceremony with a leader who he just helped, facilitate a container that felt safe. And so there was like 5 of us, and we each went one at a time, and everybody else was just holding space during that. So I thought that was really good, that I knew like people were around me and that I was safe, and like that just the way in which it was set up made it feel very like holy, or very just like very, once you get there, you just feel very grounded. It's not kind of like a split second decision at a party of like, oh yeah, I'll take this drug. It's like very intentional is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And it's kind of like frightening because it kind of feels like you're dying in some sense, because you're like hurtling through the space and then you have to kind of relax and let go, which I thought that I understood what surrendered meant before that, but like it feels very different when you have to like viscerally surrender to something like really intense. It's like really sensual in a way, like it's like the deepest kind of penetration or something like that. It's like you're just like letting this substance just take over your consciousness for you. So you're kind of like, I give up on my agency in my living, and I give up on this whole consciousness. Like, you can take it, go for it. Like, it's like that level of surrender, which is like freaky.
Yeah, like it sounds like you're like completely not in control.
Exactly. But you're kind of told beforehand that like that's the way to do it. So it's like there's some trust in like, I know it's okay for me to just like give it all, because I know I'll know it'll be fine. Like, I'll make it through. So you have to kind of just be like, and you can kind of tell as you do it, like each step that you surrender a little more, it gets like less and less. It gets more and more like expansive, and it gets just more easeful the more you sink into it. So once you start, you just keep going. It's kind of, yeah.
What's the duration like?
It's only 10 or 15 minutes long.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really
So you're
short.
just like up and down super fast.
Exactly.
And then I'll finish this question. I meant to say this, every 30 minutes the camera just cuts out. So the audio is still going. And then when we return, then I have just 3 minutes of silence, and then we go back into the interview. But shoot, what was I going to ask? Do you feel like worn out? Like after the 10-15 minutes are done, like do you just feel like really exhausted, or do you feel like energized, or do you feel
Kind of neutral. Yeah, like a little bit worn, a little bit tired, but not at all in the sense of like other drugs that release a lot of your own neurotransmitters, and then they deplete you, and then you're just like strung out and just like dead. It's not like that at all. It's kind of just like you're worn out because like a lot of energy coursed through you, but you're pretty much mostly just back to how you were. So in some ways it like shows people an experience of oneness, but then it puts you right back where you were before. So it's not necessarily like it's not necessarily a tool for realization or enlightenment or whatever you want to call it. It just kind of shows you the possibility, but then you still have to do your own path. Like you can't just like smoke that all the time and be like, I'm enlightened.
Okay, cool. So that's pretty much 30 minutes, so we're just about halfway through. Do you want a glass of water or anything? You've
I'm
got your
good.
tea. You're
Yeah.
good. Okay. I'm gonna get a quick glass of water, and then we'll come right back. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna start one more time, and then this will be the 3 minutes, and then I'll let you know when the 3 minutes are over.
Sure.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Let's see. Do you have a partner?
Yeah.
Do you have any children?
No.
Do you want children?
Maybe. I mean, probably, but not anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite place to visit in the United States?
I like Big Sur, specifically Esalen, hot spring there.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably my favorite place that I would go to regularly. Haven't seen a lot of the United States.
Esalen has like workshops, like classes and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Is that true?
they bring in all sorts of workshops. They're usually along the lines of like healing and self-improvement, massage and yoga, meditation, that kind of thing. But a lot of times I go, like the workshops are usually pretty good, but it's more about going to Esalen and you have to take a workshop to go there pretty much, or it's like the same price to take a workshop as to just stay there. So you might as well just like take a workshop, and if you don't like it, you don't have to show up at the workshop.
I see.
But it's more about like being there, like with the ocean and the mountains and the hot spring and the river and like the trees and the redwoods, like that kind of nature, and the baths and like the really good food they feed you, stuff like that, and just the kinds of people you meet there.
What kind of people have you met there?
I don't know, like people who are really into self-improvement. They're just like a little bit more open to interaction. A lot of times they're like at a difficult place in their life, and so they're going to Esalen to like recharge or whatever. But they're a little bit more open to conversation about themselves. Like they're open to more intimate conversations, I guess. And maybe being like naked in the bath together has something to do with that.
Yeah. Everyone's guard is down.
Yeah, exactly.
What was your favorite band in high school? Or musician?
I didn't really have one. Along with like not watching TV, I just wasn't that involved in a lot of like cultural stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of like oblivious to it, I guess. So I still now like won't know the name of like, when somebody will talk about some famous band, I'll be like, what's that? Or somebody will be like, we'll talk about some famous team, and I'll be like, what sport is that? They'll be like,
Did you have a favorite? Did you have like a favorite book, or did you have something that was like, what am I trying to ask?
like, was I obsessed with something?
Yeah, I feel like for me when I was in high school, I think a lot of people have a hard time in high school. High school just sucks for a lot of reasons, mostly because I think you're just like not free, and you know that there's like a world that's out there, but that you kind of don't like have access to it, you know? So I feel like a lot of people I knew, and myself included, it's like you have something that you kind of like, I guess, cling to in some way that, I don't know, makes you aware of that like larger world and like is comforting in some way.
Yeah.
Also maybe something to like kind of like strive for. I guess like for me it was like David Bowie, you know. Just cool. It made me think that like if something like that can exist, then there's like much more than this like crappy day-to-day that I'm living.
I don't really know if I had like an external thing like that. I definitely had like art definitely like connected me with like who I really was. And then I also kind of was really into doing like elaborate makeup and like face painting whenever I could, like whenever it was like a costumey kind of party. And I just remember that being kind of like an obsession of mine, is like creating this kind of mask, basically like having control over what kind of face I had for the world, and that gave me some kind of sense of protection, of like I get to choose. And so in some ways like I made myself look not quite like the real me, in interesting and artistic ways, but it was still like
Kind of like an armor.
not really showing my real face.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah, so I kind of became known as like the girl who does like really elaborate like rainbow makeup and stuff. Yeah, like kind of also expressing my creativity and difference like very obviously on my face. Because people at my high school kind of, they were mostly like rich kids who wore like boring clothes, and I don't know, that I felt they were kind of boring, so I wanted to be like statement-y.
What's your favorite place to visit or go to in San Francisco?
I guess I must like hot tubs because I like the bathhouse called Archimedes Banya. It's down in Dog Patch, or Bayview, and it's like a Russian bathhouse. It's like co-ed with like saunas, and they have a cafe and a rooftop deck and stuff like that. But otherwise, I like going to the top of hills, like the top of Vernal Heights or the top of Twin Peaks or the top of Nob Hill, just like sitting, like perched, watch the view.
Do you remember a time, maybe when you were a teenager, where you got in, just like got in like really bad trouble, and it was something that gave you like anxiety or something like that? Like, how are you going to get out of this one type of thing?
When I was in middle school, me and my friend wrote an email to another girl in the class that was just like really mean, like something like "we're gonna crush your bones" or just like a really like
threatening,
mean threat. It was weird because I was actually friends with the other girls. I don't know why I did it. It was just kind of like, I don't know, mean girls phase or whatever. And then she told the teacher, and obviously they could figure out it was us. And yeah, and I just felt like, I mean, it didn't feel like, oh my God, what's gonna happen to me? But like, oh my God, I can't believe an adult knows that I did that thing. I don't know, just this kind of like shock and shame and kind of like, yeah, something. And then probably in college, definitely in college, I like had way too much alcohol and ended up at the hospital, even though I probably didn't need to go to the hospital. They just call the ambulance whenever somebody's like passed out or something. And then that was a hassle because they sent a bill to my parents.
Oh, no.
Which my parents were actually cool with it. I think they kind of brushed it under the rug of their own psyches, so they kind of didn't talk about it that much because they were like, didn't want to think about it.
Yeah.
That side of me. So they just were like, well, just don't do it again. But I was still just like freaked out about that because I think I was more freaked out about the money, that like they would have to pay money, and that I was just like really indignant that the ambulance cost that much or something.
Yeah. How much did it cost?
I can't remember. I just remember it felt like a lot. It might have been like $500 or it might have been more, but it just felt to me at the time like so much money. I can't believe that. Yeah. Might have been more than that, yeah.
Did it change your relationship to alcohol?
Not necessarily that incident. I think just like binge drinking in general, like the first couple of years of college made me not like alcohol anymore later, because it just, you kind of realize after a while that it's not that good of a drug.
Yeah.
I still like it sometimes. Like it's, yeah, pretty good for socializing. Like I still find it, the lowering inhibition things really, really helps me in social situations. But yeah, just more careful. And yeah, I'm not that, yeah.
Are you familiar with the 7 deadly sins?
Yeah.
So you've got sloth, gluttony, lust, wrath, envy, pride, and greed.
Yeah.
Which do you think of those as the most harmful to society?
Well, I don't really believe in sins. So I don't think, like, those things are inherently bad, and I think they're part of human experience, and that us thinking that they're bad makes us worse off and probably leads to more distortions than if we just were like, oh, like I have envy. I don't know, kind of like if we all owned those things more, yeah, it wouldn't be so problematic. But I kind of skirted around the question. I don't know, I think, yeah, to me, like the disowning of our own shadow, so to speak, our own emotions and feelings that we think are bad, or we shouldn't show, like, oh, I shouldn't show people that I'm really selfish, like I should pretend that I'm not selfish, and I should pretend that I care about everybody, like all these things that people are like, oh no, I can't show the world that, or I can't even be honest about that to myself. That's like what's causing the most discord in humanity.
Like almost like a crisis of authenticity or something, like people
Yeah.
can't be authentic.
Yeah, because once you start talking about those things, they kind of unwind, because like you realize that everybody else goes through exactly the same kind of thing, and like everything you thought was super shameful about yourself, like other people have similar things. And so like once you kind of expose everything, it doesn't actually have that much to keep going on. It's just kind of like, I mean, it's still there, but I don't think it has as much charge. There's something about disowning those things that keeps them really stuck in the air.
Do you feel like the world is in generally like a generally good place or a generally bad place right now?
I think both extremes are happening at the same time. Like we're seeing like things that are better than we could have ever possibly imagined happening, and then we're seeing like the worst things possible also happening, and I think it's going to keep intensifying. Like we're going to see even worse catastrophes, and we're going to see even cooler, more beautiful other kinds of creations, and somehow it's going to balance itself out, and then we're going to make it to the next phase of humanity. Like we're in an awkward transition phase right now. So it's like all over the place. But I generally am pretty optimistic about everything coming together in the right way.
What's something positive that you see happening in the world or in society that's maybe like that's one of those extremely positive things that gives you hope for the future?
Well, just looking at my generation versus the generation before, like there's just so much more self-awareness and like motivation to seek the truth, to seek like, who am I really, like what am I really here for, instead of the convention. And it seems like every generation we get more and more like that, like more and more people awaken to the idea. Yeah, they kind of like take down old paradigms. Yeah, so more and more people are like trying to actually have like conscious partnerships with one another and conscious parenting and that kind of thing. Like if conscious parenting takes off, then like that's really good. Like if we don't fuck up our kids, we could break a really long cycle. But of course we'll fuck them up in other ways, but like, I don't know.
And then on the opposite end, what's something that you see that I guess gives you anxiety for the future?
Well, just the possibility that like there's going to be a lot of violence and like catastrophes, wars, that kind of thing. Like it's probably bound to happen. Yeah, I'm also worried about the consequences of technology. Like I know there will be a lot of really good consequences, but there will also be really bad consequences. And sometimes it takes humans like a while to realize that something's bad. So we'll do it for a while and then we're like, oh, that causes cancer, like that causes X and X. And so like for the new stuff, we haven't really figured out the ways in which they harm us yet, but then we will, and then it'll be kind of too late to save some people. So yeah, with just like the invention of like VR and like augmented reality, like if that leads to some people choosing to live in a video game rather than living in life because their life is super shitty, and that's kind of sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What would you like people to know about you?
I'm not sure. Like the first thing that popped into my head was like, I don't want people to know anything about me. But I don't think that's necessarily the truth. Just not sure. I guess I tend to try to emphasize like uniqueness or individuality or something, so I tend to want to differentiate myself from other people by believing slightly edgier things, or I don't know. So there's some wanting to be unique that goes on in how I present myself.
What's do you have any memories of having any profound art experiences, either as a kid or even as an adult, like when you saw a painting or a sculpture or a movie, just something that you felt like it had a profound impact on you and your life?
Well, in college, I went to see an exhibit at the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art.
Sorry. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I went to see an exhibit at MassMoCA in Massachusetts, and they have like really large scale installations, like that'll take up huge rooms and stuff, because it's the building itself is like a repurposed factory, so it's got this like industrial look. And so there's just an exhibit with like a bunch of really large scale installations. And I went there when I was tripping on acid, and I pretty much just, I don't know, was just like in awe of like the intensity and scale and beauty of it. Kind of like made me re-trust art as a means of communicating.
What took you to Massachusetts?
That's where I went to college.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you out there?
It was interesting. It was in a really beautiful place. And the education I got was like excellent. I just, similarly to high school, I didn't feel like I fit in with the people there very much. Mostly like Northeastern, preppy, sporty. They were really into sports. Yeah, I felt a little bit like a loner. There were a few other people like me, like the artsy kids, but even then I didn't feel like I ever found my crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as I moved back to the Bay Area, suddenly I like was amongst my crowd again. So there's something kind of Californian about it.
Yeah. What part of Massachusetts were you in?
Western Massachusetts, in a small town. So it was kind of in the middle of nowhere. Like the nearest airport was Albany, New York.
Okay. I think I know that area. I knew someone that went to Williams College.
Yeah, that's where I went.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah, that is a really excellent skill. So do you feel like feeling like you didn't quite fit in? Like, how did you go from, well, I feel like I went to school for art and I've known a lot of people that were artists. And I feel like, especially as people get older, it's like, I feel like a lot of artists kind of wish that they went to school for science or something that's like more useful. Um, what do you feel like led to that jump? Because I feel like
From science to art.
yeah, because I feel like science, especially chemistry, like it just seems like far more lucrative.
Exactly. So like the whole reason I was doing science in the first place, or science and math, was just that like I was good at them and I knew that they were like things that could lead to having a secure job in the world, whereas art was just like out of the question for, yeah, it didn't, the idea of being an artist was like not even like allowed in my brain. But then something happened my senior year when I finally realized that I was going to graduate and then that I was going to choose how to live my life, and it wasn't anybody else's choice, and it wasn't my dad's choice, and it wasn't like I wasn't really accountable to anybody else, and like that was kind of the first time I actually fully realized that. And so then I just knew that I think it was seeing some of my friends like applying for consulting jobs and putting on suits and stuff, and I was just like, oh my god, like what is this like world that people live in where they wear weird suits and like just talk in weird language and like fill out paperwork that like has a bunch of gibberish on it. I was just like, what is that? I do not even understand it. I don't even want to like deal with it. Like hopefully that's not what the future looks like. I don't know. So I just like kind of wanted to refuse to enter that kind of world. And it felt like any kind of job in science and math would just be a job. Like it would just be something that would earn money, but I wasn't like super thrilled about it. Even though I am really interested in certain topics in science, I wasn't like, oh my god, I want to devote my life to like researching that. I think I was also hoping to find the answer to consciousness in science, and it was very disappointing. And I was like, oh, it's not here. Better look somewhere else.
The answer to consciousness.
Like, why does consciousness exist? Like, why? Just that kind of existential question of like, why am I here? Why do I exist? Why does the world exist? Why is the universe here? Like that kind of thing. I was hoping that like going far enough in science that I would get some kind of information. But it kind of like, it's just kind of hilarious how little science knows about that. Like, especially like neuroscience, they're like studying the brain and stuff, and they still refuse to really talk about consciousness. Like they kind of like avoid the question.
Do you have any answers? Like why consciousness? Why do humans have consciousness?
Well, I've stopped really looking for logical answers. So I don't really have like a verbal answer that's like why, but like there's some sense of ease around it that wasn't there before. Like before I was just like really fixated on like I need to understand why, otherwise I don't understand what's the point of existing. This kind of fixation that like, yeah, I need to know, and now it's kind of like, oh, I don't really need to know.
So you feel like you've kind of you don't feel the need to know as much anymore.
Yeah, I'm still interested. Like, yeah, I would still be interested to keep up with whatever research. And, you know, I'm still, yeah, interested intellectually, but it's not like, I don't have the assumption that if I knew, then my life would somehow make more sense. There's some kind of trust in that it actually makes sense without me doing anything. Yeah. So art was something that I did feel that kind of burning passion about when I thought about myself becoming an artist and sharing my art with the world. There was like this kind of fire behind it, and I was like, whoa, this is a lot more exciting than anything else. So I think I just want to do it. Yeah.
Cool. That pretty much takes us to the end. very last question that I like to ask people is, because I always think about it that these interviews could possibly, well, the hope is that it would continue on like, almost like as like a catalog or something that people could like look at like many, many hundreds of years in the future. So with that in mind, I like to ask if people if they had advice to give to future people or future Americans, what would it be? And if the camera does cut out, just keep going and we'll just get the audio on it.
Like how far in the future?
300 years.
No, I don't think I have advice. Like, I kind of trust that we'll have figured something out by then. I'm not just, like, I don't really believe that, like, the system is going to fix itself. Like, no, I think America's totally going to be gone in 300 years. I think just, like, humans are going to hopefully have just entered into a different state of consciousness where they're a lot better at collaborating on things, like kind of working more in a group mind rather than in individual mind. Yeah.
So like the idea of, like, you foresee a time where maybe it would be even like post-nation, like we wouldn't have nations in the way that it
For
exists
sure.
now.
Yeah, we wouldn't have nations, and we wouldn't necessarily, I don't know, this might be further and further in the future, but we wouldn't necessarily have the same concept of what me means or like what we'd be just more oriented towards the collective than we are now. Kind of like how ants are more about the colony than they are about the individual thing. Like, I just think the next stage is more collective for us, which is hard to picture right now. But I guess in some ways what I'm saying is that I don't have advice for the future. I feel like they should give us advice. Like, evolution only becomes more and more like complex and intelligent. So they're probably more intelligent than us in the future.
Cool. Awesome. Do you have any questions or anything that you'd like to say?
No.
Awesome. Thank you very much.